Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So, that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit Loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Gordon Korman. Gordon Korman is a household name in the middle grade space, and you've likely heard of him. He's written over 100 books for every kind of reader, from reluctant to voracious and everyone in between. Titles like War Stories, Restart, Slacker, Swindle, Ungifted, Schooled, and Faker have been loved by many. He's here today to talk about his newest release, Snoop. Snoop is the story of a screen-obsessed boy who finds himself stuck at home with two broken legs, and he discovers that life gets harder when screens are all you have. Listeners, I was glued to the page like Carter was glued to his screens, and I can't wait to talk to him about it. So let's get right to the episode. Gordon, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh gosh, I am just thrilled. I'm so excited. As I mentioned before we hit record, I've loved so many of your books. I've pressed them into so many hands of kids. I still think if I don't like to pick favorites. Snoop is a new favorite, but Restart has my heart, and I think always will for quite some time.
Okay,
I just
that's great.
I loved
It
them.
is a lot of people's favorites.
Is it? Yeah, yeah, for good reason. But while we're here to talk about your newest, I would love a bit about you. You've got over 100 books. I know you started writing young and you just kept on writing. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about that journey through children's literature, arriving at your most recent one today.
Yeah, I mean that is, Snoop is my 106th book, and kids say to me all the time, like, "Bruh, you must be the fastest writer in history," and my answer to that is kind of not really, like, not that I'm a slow writer, but the reason why I've written so many books is just because I started writing when I was 12, right? My first book was literally my 7th grade English project, and, it was sort of a bit of a not a mistake exactly, but in my middle school, the track coach had to teach English, and we got him, and he had never taught ELA in his life, so when it came to creative writing, he didn't know what to tell us to do, and he just said, "Go work on whatever you want for the rest of the year." Uh, it was February, right? So from February to June, we had a what, like 42-minute class period
Yep.
to just write whatever. And that's how I wrote the first draft of my first book. So I wrote it in middle school. I actually signed the contract for it when I was an eighth grader, and it was published when I was a freshman in high school. And I've really been writing ever since, which is why the numbers are just high because I got this crazy early, let's face it, pretty lucky head start almost 50 years ago, and I've just been writing ever since.
Wow. So where do the ideas for those 106 books come from?
I mean, I think when I first got started writing, I wrote from a lot of personal experience because back then I was still very close in age to my characters and readers, and then I got older and started figuring out different kind of places. A lot of what if thinking, for me. I know I do a lot of school appearances, and kids are pretty sick of me saying, I guess it sounds corny when some old bald guy shows up and is like, well, what if are the two most powerful words for writers? But I still believe that um what if? Like, if you think of any story, there's always a what if kind of baked into it somewhere, right? What if the ungifted kid got sent to the super gifted school by mistake, right? What if, you mentioned Restart. What if, the worst bully in the history of middle school, fell off his roof, lost his memory? Would he go back to the kind of bully he was before? Or maybe be different, but even I ask kids to say, like, even true stories, right? Like, what if the world's largest ocean liner hit an iceberg and sank on its maiden voyage? Like, they work as what ifs. So I tell kids, if you ever get writer's block, go back to what are the what ifs of my story.
Mhm. When you look across all of them, in addition to that what if, which is really, now that I think of it, I can find seeds of that, right, in the books that you have written. But when you think of them, are there any additional threads that you see or you purposely put there? I know as a reader of your books, I always get instant character connections. I get, instant realness. I also get some fun and some humor. Like there's some hallmarks, I would say, of the books. And I'm wondering what you would like them to be from your point of view before we get to talk about Snoop.
Well, I mean, most generally, like humor,
Yeah.
right? Y- you know, I visit a lot of schools and meet my readers, which is kind of well, it's great research too, right? Because you hear what gets the big laugh and what gets the introspective chuckle and what gets the you think that's funny, that makes one of us.
Yeah.
But the other thing I notice is uh, there isn't that much humor in sort of the canon, right? Not necessarily saying the books that kids do read, but if you think about the books that you can't graduate from your school district from, let's
Right.
say, 6th grade or 8th grade without having read, like those, the absolute can't miss assigned novel studies of school. There are probably less funny books
Yeah.
than books where, one very narrow plot point happens, and like the dog dies at the end, right? You always have to read Old Yeller and Sounder and Where the Red Fern Grows,
Yeah.
but how many books are actually funny? And then I think about my adult life, right? What do you use more as an adult? Your sense of humor or your ability to recognize foreshadowing
Yeah.
or your ability to diagram sentences? Like, why don't we teach more humor in school? So I mean, that's something I've been, I certainly wouldn't say that all a book has to be as funny, but I would definitely pound the table on more humor for kids, right? Especially because if you think about obviously kids read a lot of stuff, but your most reluctant readers probably only read that canon of novel studies, and they're the ones who probably need funny books the most, right? Um, in terms of, like styles or things that come up in my own writing, there are certain things like I love the idea of the kid who's sort of on the outside looking in.
Hmm.
Right? Always feeling like I'm as good as the cool people, and that should be me, right? I think that bullying is something that comes up repeatedly in my books. Something that I think is incredibly powerful for kids is just the notion of this is not fair, right? I mean, if you've ever raised kids, you hear that's not fair like 800 times a day. And certainly teachers have students talk about how this isn't fair. So if you can create a situation where something is happening to a character and it's just not fair, you so instantly have young readers on your side. They will so instantly relate to that kid. I mean, even in Snoop, there are a lot of moments where
Yeah.
Carter is sort of stuck between what he knows he needs to do to not get himself further and further in trouble for snooping, but at the same time, what he knows is the right thing to do because there are animals out there, and he is the only person who knows about them, and he is the only person who can help them, and he is stuck. It's not fair, but that's the situation he's in.
Yeah. So let's that's a perfect segue. Let's dive into talking about Snoop a little bit more. For listeners where this is a book that is new for them, I'd love for you to give them the scoop on Snoop.
I like
Nah,
the Snoop on Scoop. Okay.
yeah,
Um, so Carter is sort of a screen obsessed, technology obsessed
yeah,
kid who he's on spring break skiing, and he gets into this bizarre accident, a head-on collision with his brother in such a way that he breaks both his legs at the same time, and he is stuck, right, like at home, homebound. He's doing all his school virtually, completely bored and isolated from everybody his age. And on top of all that, there's a rumor going on that the girl he's had a crush on since kindergarten is really getting very, very friendly with Carter's arch enemy in the Great Lakes. He has got to get to the bottom of this. But how's he going to do that? He's stuck at home with two broken legs. And he remembers that there's a park right next to the school, and the police have a camera there. It's public, right? You just go on the internet, and anyone can watch the feed from that camera. And he realizes that Lacey and Maddox will have to walk right by that camera every single day on the way home from school. So he sort of does it just to check on them, but he becomes kind of hooked on snooping, right? Because that's not the only camera in town. There are
yep,
others. And if you do a little bit of work, there are even more, right? You can get into
yep,
the camera in the ice cream store and the camera in the 7-Eleven parking lot. And eventually he gets so hooked that his mom has a drone, and he figures out how to mount a camera on it and fly it around, like literally snooping on his friends.
yeah. There's such an element to this book that I think would appeal to middle grade readers for sure, but even adults. We are just in like this social media technology obsessed kind of world, or maybe we're not talking about cameras, public or not public, but social media feeds and all of the different ways that we have information coming to us. That is such a big part of the book. So
Yeah,
what?
and I think that
Yeah,
I mean, like, I'm not a big like, oh, the moral of the story is, but I guess
right.
one of the things I was thinking about while writing Snoop was there is so much information out there for kids
Yeah,
or adults, and all you really have to do is just go look for it, right? The question is, there are no guardrails, right? In a way, we're being asked to provide our own guardrails, which
yeah,
people are bad at, and Carter in particular is not so great at that. And certainly someone who can't get out of their own house is going to be even more obsessed with what can you see on a screen, right? And I think that not wanting to give away too much for Carter, uh, he is getting himself more and more into trouble with all this snooping, not just with his classmates, but with his family and with the local police.
right.
And for him, the moment where he realizes it just has to stop. It's just sort of, the old saying, like, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, right? Like
Yes.
he literally has to hit that point.
Yeah, yeah, and he does, and that was a part. I've got some sticky notes throughout my copy of the book. And you're right. The book shows his transformation from beginning to end, but he is the one that has to know where that line is. And that is the hard part, isn't it? Is figuring that out. And when you're young and your brain's not even as developed as adults try to make those same decisions, it's usually those external circumstances that show you a thing or two. And he had a lot going on. We
Yeah.
can't give away the end, but more as you alluded to earlier than just the snooping, but then something that he feels compelled to share, but holds back because he found it snooping.
Yeah,
So
well,
there's
he's
so many layers.
stuck. You know,
Yeah,
people are looking at the book right now. Our cover model is a red panda, and I think that one of the big sort of things going on in the story is that as he is snooping on his classmates, trying to sort of stay up to date with what's going on, he starts to notice these animals that have absolutely no business being in a random, sleepy suburban town, like a red panda and a swift fox and a three-toed sloth. And a little bit of research confirms that all of these animals are not just animals from hundreds or even thousands of miles away, but they are endangered species, right? And so Carter knows he's getting himself deeper and deeper into trouble by snooping, but at the same time, he is the only person who sees these animals. And if he is going to help them, he is going to have to risk getting himself even deeper into hot water.
yeah. Now, in my mind, now that you've mentioned the what if that we talked about at the beginning, I can imagine a couple of what if questions that were posed in creating this book. But I'd love for you to talk a bit more about your inspiration behind it and where the idea came from.
So, so I'm a big fan of old movies, and Snoop was inspired actually by a movie, not just older than my readers, but before I was born, Rear Window by the great director Alfred Hitchcock. And in Rear Window, an adult uh, has broken his leg. He only broke one, but it's the 50s. We do things bigger here in the 21st century. Um, he's stuck at home, and that's where all he's got to do is look out his rear window. He lives in New York City. There's a big building across the way, and he basically gets hooked on snooping and finding all these intrigues and solving mysteries in this building across from him. And I thought to myself, like, okay, looking out the window is not bad for 1952.
Right, right.
But in 2025, we can do a little bit better than that because we've got
Yeah,
cameras and internet and social media and drones and whatever. So my idea, my what if was, well, what if you sort of had a kid rear window situation with 2025 technology, which fits perfectly because so many of our kids are so much better with technology
yeah.
than we are as adults. I mean, Carter is the ultimate kid to get really sort of sucked into this world of snooping.
Yeah. Just a quick YouTube video later, and he's figured out how to get into wherever he wants to go, right?
Exactly, exactly.
I do want to mention too, like, there's certainly the snooping element, there's the screen element, the where do you draw the line element, but there's other things that are sure to draw readers in and find connection points too. And one of them being the sibling relationship, as you mentioned, the big brother, the little brother. Um,
Well, I'm
I
thrilled. Yeah, I'm thrilled that you mentioned that because um, I'm an only child, and so the sibling dynamic has never been something that
yeah,
I had firsthand experience with.
yep,
Um, and I think that I worked really hard on Carter and Martin, right? Just because I'm a bit of an outsider to that world, and I've always had to sort of think about the kids I grew up with, the friends I had, and how they were with their siblings. And it seemed so amazing to me that you can live with somebody and have this deep connection, uh, undeniable love, and at the same time, you spend 95% of your time, like, torturing this person. It's something I've never experienced, but I feel very, very proud.
Yeah.
Um, my editor, is very much a big brother and kept telling me as we went through the editorial process, like, "Carter is such a big brother."
Yes, yes. So I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I was an only child for a very long time. I didn't get my brothers until my parents remarried, so I was 10 and 13 when my brothers
Mm,
came along. But then when I had my own kids, right, I had three under three. And as I watched them grow up, I was like, what is happening? How do you love each other and hate each other and all of the things? And so I just loved watching that dynamic because, like you,
yeah,
I never understood it. So seeing it then with my own kids and then totally could like
because
connect
your
them.
own siblings were almost too much younger than
Yes,
you for you to sort of be in that same boat with, right?
yes.
Yeah.
I
No,
loved them all the time.
I have 3 kids too, and I think it used to freak me out when they would fight,
Yes,
because I didn't have a place to put it. My wife was one of 3, and she just was
you
like,
got it.
it didn't bother her at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Same situation. I also want to mention two other characters that he ends up I guess like hypothetically meeting. One is the very pregnant woman in the park with the devil of a toddler. I so
Right,
enjoyed seeing that. And then what I really loved was the war between businesses across the street and the little shenanigans that would go on.
right.
And I love this idea that Carter realized that, I thought my town was so boring. I thought my town was so sleepy, but there is so much going on in our neighborhoods and communities than we might not realize. Some criminal, right? And some not. But I just love that reminder that, no matter how bored or boring you think something is, with or without the cameras, there's always stuff going on. And I just
Yeah.
love that reminder.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that, um, we miss a lot because we're not looking for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why snooping is so addictive, right? Because once you start to look, you're just sort of amazed at what's out there.
Yes, which is exactly why I did not Google my hometown and see if there were public cameras. I don't want to know. So when you think of, this was book 106 and you think forward, I'd love to know if you're working or what you're working on, I should probably say, or anything that you can give listeners a sneak peek into that might be coming after Snoop.
Sure. So my next book is called Hyper Gifted, and it is well, I guess it's now considered a series, right? Like Ungifted
Hmm.
was a book from I think it's a while ago. It's like 2012, but it's really been one of my more popular books. And then it was followed up by Super Gifted a number of years later, and now there's going to be Hyper Gifted. So that will be coming out in February of 2026.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait. Can't wait.
Awesome.
So, where is the best place for listeners to find you so they can go through your backlist, keep up to date on the books to come? Any place you'd like to point them to?
Well, my website is just gordonkorman.com. Um, and that's, where you'll get all the latest covers and the updates and tour schedule if I'm coming near your town for autographings and presentations and stuff. So that's always a good place to go. And then I'm usually just Gordon Korman on social media.
Okay. Well, I will put links to those into the show notes, and of course, links to the books that we mentioned today, especially Snoop. And I just want to thank you. This was a kidlit dream for me to be able to talk to you today, and so I'm just so grateful you spent time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.